SARC Talk. SARC is a nonprofit cancer research organization that develops and manages clinical research trials in pediatric and adult sarcomas. SARC Talk is a podcast to discuss activities of SARC, interview sarcoma research leaders, and review scientific initiatives in the sarcoma field.
Welcome to SARC Talk, episode 40. My name is Scott Okuno, a medical oncologist at Mayo Clinic and chief medical officer at SARC. At SARC Talk, we interview interesting people who are connected to sarcoma, where we can all share and spread the knowledge about sarcoma. All episodes are posted on our website, Spotify, YouTube, SARC channel, or wherever podcasts are available. Please subscribe and submit comments because we do look at them. Our guest today is Dr. Catherine Wilbur, a sarcoma medical oncologist at Johns Hopkins University. She went to medical school at the University of Washington School of Medicine. She did her internal medicine residency at the University of Michigan, and then she did her fellowship in oncology at Johns Hopkins University, where she is presently on staff as assistant professor of oncology. Dr. Wilbur is my co-host of our new podcast series called SARC Talk Journal Club. Today we will discuss SARC Talk Journal Club, what it's all about, and kind of what our plans are for the Journal Club. But before we discuss SARC Talk Journal Club, let's get to know a little bit more about my co-host, Catherine Wilbur. Dr. Wilbur, welcome to SARC Talk.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Please, maybe it's worthwhile and it's helpful for all of us to kind of share with our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in sarcoma. And I think those comments will be very helpful.
Yeah. Again, thank you, Scott. It's really an honor to be here. I'm an avid SARC Talk listener. And so, I really enjoy sort of listening to the journeys of all the, the investigators and the guests that come on, and really looking forward to co-hosting the podcast with you. So I'm originally from Montana. I was born and raised, and I've lived in every time zone in the continental U.S., like throughout my medical training and now. But between undergrad and medical school, I worked at Memorial Sloan Kettering for a year, and I was working on patient-reported outcome measures. And it was really during that time that I started to understand sort of the journey of the cancer patient, really the unique challenges that they went through, and just sort of what that journey in general looked like, and then sort of the special bond between the patient and the physician as they're going through that journey. So really from that experience, I knew that I was destined for oncology. From there, I went to University of Washington, made the decision to pursue internal medicine, and then I ended up at University of Michigan for my residency. And it was really my experience at the University of Michigan and with Dr. Rashmi Chugh that sort of piqued my interest in sarcoma. So during it was actually my first rotation as a second year resident. I was in clinic with Dr. Chugh, and she is an incredible clinician, and it was really just inspiring to work with her. Not only that, but it was the diversity of sarcoma that was very intriguing to me as well. So it was, the fact that we could see patients who were adolescent young adults all the way, to 80s and 90s. And then it was really my first exposure, just learning that sarcoma is not one disease, but really a heterogeneous disease. So sort of learning about each different subtype, I was really intrigued. And so after that experience with Dr. Chugh, we worked on a couple of research projects together. And then I found myself at Johns Hopkins for fellowship. And so while I was here, I worked with Dr. Christian Meyer. I met the rest of the sarcoma team, and really my decision was made at that point.
One thing I didn't realize and I forgot is that Dr. Rashmi Chugh has kind of mentored a lot of different people. In fact, Brittany Ciantas, part of my group here who leads our sarcoma team here, has been trained and mentored by both Scott Schutze and Rashmi. And now you're kind of another protege that comes out of that group there. And there are others as well that have come out. So we're excited about that. In SARC Talk, we do spend some time talking about how mentorship, kind of changes a career path. And you said, yes, you spent time at Memorial. Then you spent some time just by happen chance with Rashmi. And then all of a sudden now you spend time in, your fellowship, and then you met, Dr. Myers over there. And maybe you can share with our group the importance of these connections and mentorship, because they will help and steer and direct all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that importance of mentorship cannot be understated. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I certainly don't think I would have ended up in sarcoma without the mentorship that I've received. I just spoke about Dr. Chug, but really she was instrumental, right? Even as I was making my rank list for fellowship, I was on the phone with her. She still is kind enough to meet with me, like at all of the major meetings. And so I'm really grateful, that I've been working with her and mentored by her. Now that I'm at Hopkins, I work a lot with Dr. Christian Meyer, who is, my mentor and my partner as the only other adult, oncologist in sarcoma. And so he's been just a wonderful advocate for me. He's always available to talk about patients, to give me feedback on research projects, um, just to talk about new ideas and updates within the field. And so, I think having someone like that is just incredibly important, especially as you're kind of a young investigator or a trainee. I mean, really navigating your career. I think I'm also fortunate here at Hopkins. We have our pediatric sarcoma group as well, that has been, incredibly helpful in terms of kind of collaboration and research opportunities. So doctors Christine Pertilis, Brian Ladle, Nico Yosa, will meet with me. And so we're sort of, constantly talking about new ideas and opportunities for trials. The one other, just outside of Hopkins too, I've found a mentor in Dr. Bree Wilkie at Colorado. So I first met her when I was about to join faculty. And so it was helpful just sort of getting, another perspective about the field of sarcoma. And she also has been helpful in terms of talking about career trajectory, and research. So I think as you can tell, I have research mentors, both within Hopkins and outside of Hopkins, within sarcoma. And I think it really just speaks to sort of the sarcoma community as a whole, like how welcoming this community has been, throughout my training as a resident, as a fellow, as a junior faculty member, right? And I think at the end of the day, we all have the same goal to improve care for our patients. And I think that's something that's really palpable within this community.
Yeah. No, I agree. And, what you're sharing with is kind of the sentiment that anybody that's listening, that's in other tumor groups or young and developing their careers, the sarcoma community is by far, we think, because we're in it, the most loving, caring, and nurturing group, and we're all supportive. And I know that you said you trained in 3 different time zones. Your mentors are in 2. I think, Michigan's in a different time zone as the East Coast, but still, mentors are not only the people you work with day in and day out, but can help have multiple mentors for different roles. And as you said, it's important to reach out and connect with them.
Absolutely.
Part of our vision when you and I were kind of communicating about, hey, let's start a new SARC Talk called SARC Talk Journal Club. And it'd be great to hear kind of your thoughts of what we or you want to accomplish with a journal club, because in a busy practice, a lot of times we don't have time to stop, reflect, and do an in-depth review / journal club. Some of us are very fortunate to be at big institutions like yourself, ourselves as well. The bigger the institution, however, sometimes it's harder even to meet as a group. But however, there are some institutions that are a little bit smaller, and how do they do this in-depth discussion of the cutting-edge published journals, and how do we discuss that? So maybe share with our listeners kind of your thoughts about where Journal Club is, and what are the thoughts going forward as we start Journal Club starting in June.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very excited about this opportunity. I mean, I think it's just going to allow us the chance to really sit down with a single article, right? And think about how it's going to impact our clinical practice. Is it relatable? Is it something that we can implement right away? And then really just have that opportunity to sort of deep dive into the data, understand the design of these of potentially the clinical trials as we're reviewing, who were the patients that were enrolled? Who are the patients that responded? How can we take that data and sort of determine, how we can make the most impact for the patient that we have in front of us? I think it's also going to be a great opportunity just to think about next steps. We have trial A, but how is that going to impact trial B? And sort of what can we do as a community to sort of collaborate, and sort of, bring on the next steps, or sort of implement, the results that we have. I also am excited, I think it's going to be just that platform so that we can reach sort of oncologists everywhere. As you mentioned, we have the opportunity, to reach the physicians, the oncologists in academic institutions, but, also the physicians who are treating sarcoma everywhere. So in community practices. And I think, as you alluded to, everyone's busy. And the field is just constantly changing. And so I think this will be just a great, opportunity for us to sort of sit down, absorb key findings, and really kind of focus on one article, for the time that we have. And then
Absolutely.
finally, I think it's going to be great to kind of get trainees interested in sarcoma as well. And so I always think, these podcasts will be great. The trainees can learn about how exciting sarcoma is, how much more there is to be done in the field. And so I'm hopeful in that regard as well.
I'm really excited because I'm going to spend some time understanding the articles a little bit more because we're going to have to do the actual journal club together. And then in addition, I can hear a little bit about your perspective of how you and the team over at Johns Hopkins kind of does it. I can kind of share kind of how we interpret it here at Mayo Clinic. However, there might be other opportunities for us. So maybe first tell the group, how are we going to select the articles? And what is the vetting mechanism that we're going to have?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, always welcome to take suggestions from the audience members and listeners. But I think, really we'll be reviewing articles on our kind of a rolling basis. So looking at major journals, PubMed alerts, of course, the suggestions from our listeners. And then I think as we look at the articles that we'll review, thinking about things like, clinical impact, do they have the chance to sort of change our treatment, or will they become the new standard of care? I think looking too at kind of methodological impact and, whether there's sort of a unique design or something we need to be thinking about moving forward. And of course, just that, that relevance to our clinical practice.
Absolutely. As there's a variety of journal clubs out there and we get listserved so many articles, I think the main focus that we thought about is doing more clinical studies. But, where do you see the space of groundbreaking basic science? And could we throw one of those in there too at some point, do you think? Or where do you see us doing that?
Absolutely. No, of course. I think we're open to all of it, right? This is a learning opportunity. This is to make sure that, we're all aware of sort of what's going on in the field, like what is the newest, and how can we take those kind of, findings and translate them, right? At the end of the day, it's sort of, bench to bedside. And so I'm excited about that possibility as well.
One of the unique things that all of us know, and we started out like everybody is a family in the sarcoma community. We probably know most of the authors or co-authors or lead authors or senior authors. So if we ever get into an article, would you ever see us actually having a separate podcast, maybe with the actual author of one of these articles?
Oh, absolutely. I honestly, I can't think of a better opportunity, right? We would get sort of the inside scoop, if you will. What were they thinking about as they designed the trial? How did they come up with the design? How did they choose the patients? Thinking about things like biomarkers or what comes next from a correlative standpoint, what comes next from a trial standpoint.
It's exciting because we've selected 3 articles so far, and I know that we would probably after the journal club drops that we probably want to have a follow-up with some of the authors already. We're just thinking out loud, but it's really going to be important that when we do drop these journal clubs, that we listen and respond to people's comments, because us too might have the wrong perspective on these studies and the implications, and we'll take it with a little bit of grace as well. And we will have follow-up to posted or what we'd say drop journal clubs, and we will then prepare comments and summarize comments. So it's going to be an asynchronous communication, meaning we'll do the podcast, journal club, and we will post it. We'll wait for comments before we make decisions on what to do on that. Right before this episode started airing, we started talking about how do you foresee us doing, how frequently would we be dropping these podcasts?
Yeah, so right now I think, ideally once a month. sort of look at sort of what's come out in that month and, probably on a monthly basis.
So what we're going to do is we have 3 articles that we have kind of selected, and then every month or so, we're going to drop another one. But we might not post new ones if there's nothing good. However, if there's a lot of follow-up feedback and we want to follow up, we might go back to another article with the author or some in-depth discussion and maybe bring in other people who might have some additional insight that we missed and then bring them back as a podcast. So this is a dynamic podcast. It's called Journal Club as we do it. But we haven't have we selected the first time we're going to do the first one yet, Catherine?
I think the beginning of June will be our first recording. So hopefully dropping shortly after that.
Exactly. So we have a time set up in our busy schedules to actually record our first journal club, as we would say. We're going to try to record all 3 at one time and drop them at different times. But in the future, we might bunch them up and do that. We're excited about this opportunity, Catherine and I, and, hopefully as those listeners are here, you can, share those people. As Catherine said, there might be opportunities for sharing to other people outside of, the routine sarcoma community, because this is be available for Journal Club for anybody going through internal medicine and fellowship. So, Catherine, do you have any other ideas of how to share this Journal Club with other groups?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, obviously this, just being on this podcast is a great start. I think, social media will be important, professional societies, even reaching out to fellowship program directors, just to make sure that our medical oncology fellows are aware of this podcast.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I said it, not even thinking about it, but now that we say it, we got to do it now, Catherine. We got to get them out to the...
We do.
We have to do that. I didn't even think about it. We have to get them to the fellowship directors as well. You're right. So, our audience is not just the U.S. as well, and we're trying to reach out more and more to non-U.S. sites as well. And some of the articles that we picked might be approved for indications here in the United States. And kind of, Catherine, what's your thoughts of, it might be worthwhile also to get a read of how these drugs are or not approved or used also in, the UK, Europe, Asia, South Asia. You can imagine anywhere, because our audience is quite broad. So people listening might say, yeah, that's good for the US, but the reality is it's not applicable elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it will certainly be important for us to kind of consider that. And hopefully we can get input right from experts too in other countries, right? Just to sort of give us that sense of what's available and what those practice standards are like. Honestly, just as an example, we just had a visiting scholar from Ukraine who was with us for a few weeks. And so it was, just really enlightening understanding sort of what's available, in Ukraine. And so I think, certainly that will be something that we consider throughout this journal club.
Outstanding. And so those that are listening, yeah, definitely be waiting in anticipation for the drop of our first SARC Talk Journal Club. And we will look forward to any comments that you have and perspectives, because as Catherine has been willing to be the first co-host here for of the inaugural SARC Talk Journal Club, we're all willing to learn. So that's the great part. Catherine, any other additional comments that you might have?
I think, like you said, Scott, I mean, this is really going to be a podcast for the sarcoma community, for everyone interested in sarcoma. So I think as much feedback as we can get, comments, suggestions, ideas, I mean, that's what'll make this podcast great. So really looking forward to this opportunity.
I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to learn from you, Catherine, as well. And we look forward to spending time together and going over these journal articles that have been selected and then going forward. So we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Well, for those that are listening, thanks again. We will be having our first podcast probably sometime in June, early July, and then we look forward to your comments as we move forward. So again, we are recording now pre-holiday Memorial Weekend, so hopefully everybody will have a great holiday season. We look forward to everybody at ASCO, or if this drops after ASCO, we'll be seeing you after ASCO. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to SARC Talk. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. To learn more about SARC, visit us at sarctrials.org. If you have questions or would like to suggest a topic, email us at sarctalk@sarctrials.org. SARC Talk is made possible through the generous support of Surier Pharmaceuticals. Together, we can find a cure for all forms of sarcoma.